So you're going to have some partnership issues and challenges in business, whether it's starting off or whether you've been through an experience where you had a business partner. You may have some differences and you guys don't agree on certain things. And I think today's topic, I want to really deep dive into the concept and philosophy of how to work things out when your partner is not willing to collaborate with you to grow your business, or not willing to meet you halfway, or perhaps you have issues and challenges when it comes to stagnation because you guys don't have necessary pathways, and you have disagreements based on certain methodologies about your business and how you want to grow it and what kind of direction you want to take. So the first thing we're going to discuss and necessarily tackle is the concept of, well, what happens during a disagreement, right? And how do those disagreements arise on a business level? So if you've had partners, or if you're going through a business right now and you're struggling, and you have a partner in there that doesn't necessarily see those things the same way you do, doesn't necessarily have the same goals or values that you have. Perhaps at the beginning, you guys went into this venture and everything worked out. You guys were okay, and you guys got together and agreed on a lot of good things. And eventually, what ends up happening is you guys have your opinions and differences, and that stacks up over time. Things are held up or bottled up inside some of the partners you may be dealing with. And eventually it starts to catch up to the point where every single decision you have to make in business, whether it be to move it forward or essentially grow it, it comes into a disagreement, comes into a verbal argument, and to the point where you just guys can't stand each other anymore. So that happens quite a lot in small and medium-sized businesses, those especially with partners. And I'm not saying that this is a common thing everywhere. It does happen over time. Like I said, things are bottled up and those things come to light eventually. So at the beginning, what ends up happening, of course, is probably everything works out for a couple of years, and then basically bit by bit there are differences that are created. Let's assume that the business was running for 5 years. The first 2 to 3 years everything is fine, borderline acceptable and agreeable, and then in year 4 or 5 what ends up happening is you get differences of opinions because one partner wants to take the business a certain direction and you yourself probably want to see it in another direction. And things like that can cause a lot of chaos, not only for your business but the employees who are in it, especially if you're in the revenue threshold of like $500,000 up to 5 million. We have some stable employees for a while, and you have direction, you have certain delegations and tasks assigned to employees with systems in place. And what ends up happening is these employees, this work environment becomes hostile, and they start looking at this territory as a danger, and they start thinking, where can I find another job? And what ends up happening is some of these employees that you may or may not have are loyal people, right? And they're essentially, working for a while with you. They've been with you since the beginning, and they actually anticipated growing in this company. But because of these disagreements and issues that you're all of a sudden having, they just don't feel comfortable anymore. So they're starting looking elsewhere. They're trying to figure out, hey, what's my next move? Business is also declining during those arguments, right? So perhaps you don't show up to work because you don't want to see your other partner, and you guys have your set of differences, and you coordinate your schedule around that. But in reality, your business can really use you during that time, right? So what do you do when that happens? What are some of the steps that you can take to resolve the issue of partnerships and disputes with partnerships and disagreements that you're having with your partner? So I wanted to go ahead and explain to you something, what we call as a segregation methodology. And what that is basically putting yourself in a perspective and bringing a third party in. And usually third parties are individuals who come in, have an outside perspective, and can give you some light in terms of, hey, you guys really need to fix certain holes, or else your business is going to be gone. Everything you've worked so hard to build is at risk, right? Everything you've worked so hard to build is at risk, and now's the time to put your differences aside and really focus on the business. You may have personal opinions, you may have certain things that you want to hold on to in terms of your values, but don't shove it on the business, because let's look at the financials, let's look at the facts, let's look at statistics and numbers and see, what are some of the things that the business really needs to, that nurturing cycle. What can we do to fix those issues? And sometimes, even third parties, even if they step in, it's all good and dandy in front of that individual or consultant, but behind the scenes, there's a lot of disagreements and there's no movement. So it's still clashing, right? It's still clashing. So that's still a huge problem. So what I feel is the best way to resolve these type of scenarios and issues, especially if you know that business has been stagnant due to those disagreements, you don't see profits rising, you have a lot of employees that are already starting to seek out employment elsewhere. Your customers are not happy because customers, you can see like the level of satisfaction and service has just been declining Because again, you're not paying attention to that. You're always paying attention to how to protect yourself and preserve your values, so that you're always right and your partner's wrong, or your partner's always trying to put you down, or some things and disagreements that you're having in between. So in that situation, right, the best thing to do is exit your business. It may not sound like the most comforting advice, but I give you my word. If you don't exit now, it's going to frustrate you. It's going to drag you down. Your business is going to decline. You have nothing left to walk out from, right? You're going to leave in a very disastrous way, and it's going to hurt you a long time because it's going to stay in your head. Even if you shut down the business, things don't come to fruition, and you leave, and your partner leaves, and you guys have your separation there. It's going to haunt you. It's going to haunt you. Hey, man, I should have done this. I should have done that. My business should have been better. I should have taken care of my customers. I should have had different partners. And all these type of should haves are really going to occupy space in your head that's not necessarily meant to be there. So I think before you actually go through that phase of going through that negative experience, think about what are some of the things that you can do right immediately, right now, that can resolve those problems. And if you really feel that you're stuck and you're not able to resolve those problems because there's an extreme level of disagreement to the point where you guys can't stand each other, I think that's the point where you start considering an exit. And we can talk about that, right? Like one of the things that I specialize in is basically, damage control in that scenario, but more importantly, coming in and, I invest in businesses, particularly small and medium-sized companies. And I always look at, solopreneurs sometimes. I look at individuals who have built their business through, themselves. But at times I do come across people who have partners. And most of the disagreements that I've seen was because they have difference of opinions, right? They have different ways of conducting themselves and different directions they want to take the company. And in those situations, what ends up happening is statistically, even if I don't get in the position of acquiring that company, in a matter of 2 to 3 years, that business no longer exists or it's shut down or something disastrous happened. And those people almost always, get at least 95% of the time after those scenarios and negative incidents, they regret. They regret the way their employees were treated. They regret the fact that they had to exit in a very, bad way. They regret the way that they were treating, the other partner. And they also regret the fact that they started all this, worked so hard, put in many hours, sacrificed so much time, only not to get anything out of it. So before that ends up happening, before you get into that situation and you start realizing, hey, you know what, Ali's probably right, or somebody already told me this, I really need to consider exiting my business or position. And we can look at some of the solutions that we can work with. But it's important to recognize the issues as they're, ahead of you and give it the way it is, state the fact as they are. Don't try to overdress it. Don't say, oh, it's just a temporary thing. My partner's going to be all right. Or don't think for a second that, you can just delay the inevitable because that's going to happen, right? So start thinking ahead of time. Start doing some planning there. And if you guys are really looking to exit your business, or if you're thinking of somebody who's in that situation, I think you guys should reach out to me. There are certain things that I can definitely do. And one of them is basically coming in as the other partner and creating scenarios where we'll keep that one chef in their kitchen and let them run the business, but we'll control it from a different perspective to work with different angles to improve the business and bring it back to where it needs to be. And in addition to that, over the next couple of years, add some more value so that ultimately everybody benefits financially. Okay, so I just wanted to give you guys my 2 cents on partnership, struggles and battles that I've seen over the years. And I think it's very critical that you guys take this information, use it in your own business, or if you know somebody, share this video with them so that they can get the insight and the information that's necessary to think clearly and move ahead with their lives and hopefully with their businesses. With that said and done, this is your guide and mentor, Ali Tarafdar. See you guys next time. Bye for now.